And yes, we are live. Yes, we are live on Let's Think Podcast. I'm your host, Sheikh Seven Islam Male. Don't allow me to forget to tell y'all to shop with the Fez dealer. Please shop with the Fez dealer and get your urban Islamic Sufi experiences. Custom made fezes, turbans, zikr beads, etc. Whatever you need, hit up the Fez dealer. That's FEZDEALER Fez dealer on Instagram. Reach out to the brother. Of course, allow me to rise, giving all thanks and perfect praises unto Allah, highest honors to his holy prophet. Honors to the forerunner Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Honors to the Moorish Science Temple of America. Honors to my leadership, Brother L. Portizel, and Sister Chica's M. Portizel. Honors to their staffs and officials. Honors to all leadership, past, present, and future of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Honors to the North Fatimiyya Sufi Order. Honors to the Grand Sheikh, Wahid Azal. Honors to all participating in the comprehensive program of upliftment for all humanity. I'm your host, Sheikh Seven Islam. Yeah. Islam, and Nur Alaikum. Nur Alaikum.
Alaikum Noor. Alaikum Noor. Alaikum Noor.
Yes, we are back and we got the brother, the Sheikh, Wahid Azal back. For those who may be looking for our co-host, Jarvis McGriffell, he won't be with us tonight because our brother is out enjoying himself, which he's very much deserving of. Our brother, Sharif Anael-Bey, he's in a meeting at this point, but inshallah, he'll definitely be in the building here shortly. So we have our brother Wahid Azal, our Sheikh Wahid Azal. Wahid, how you doing today, brother?
أعوذ بالله العلي العظيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. I'm doing well. How are you?
Man, alhamdulillah for everything. Alhamdulillah for everything. I can't complain. I can't complain. Complaining would be ungrateful, and gratitude is the attitude. When you got gratitude, you got altitude. So
Yeah,
that's
it.
what I'm striving to stay on that level.
Gratitude is altitude indeed.
Yes,
But I
sir.
tell you what, I have also been tracking everything for the last 2 weeks, and I've barely gotten a full night's sleep. Just watching this World War III unfold. It's been quite a deal. No one saw this coming, least of all this Team America that is installed in the White House. A bunch of amateur, idiotic ideologues and opportunists that control the American government at the moment. Represented by Mr. Donald J. Trump, the greatest clown to ever set foot into a leadership position anywhere on this planet. They didn't expect what was coming. They thought that they would kill the supreme leader of Iran, and that would be the decapitation of the regime. And that's all she wrote. The system and the government would collapse the next moment, and America would just wheel in its own people in there and take over the country. It hasn't panned out this way. So we are now, what is it, almost 12 days. It is the 12th day today, and Iran is hit and hitting back and hitting hard. It's taking hits itself. Tehran, the city of my birth, has been carpet bombed, has been cluster bombed. About 3-4 days ago, they hit the Israelis hit the oil installation in Tehran itself, and basically exploded many metric tons of petroleum into the atmosphere of the Tehran skyline. So that city's entire skyline is now toxic with petroleum. That's a war crime. And the Americans and the Israelis have been committing war crime after war crime against the Iranian population. They've hit and destroyed heritage sites, mosques, from 500 years ago, etc. In the city of Isfahan, some of these have been seriously damaged. This is just, this is Hitler, on steroids, attacking the country of my birth. But the Iranians have also hit back. They've hit back at every single U.S. military installation in the Middle East, beginning in Bahrain, where the U.S. Fifth Fleet used to be stationed. They've hit a lot of these war ships docked over there. They've hit the CENTCOM headquarters of the Middle East in Bahrain. They've hit Qatar numerous times. They've hit the UAE. They've taken out countless U.S. personnel, commanders, soldiers, etc. So right now, the American mainstream press, who's weaving this very minimalist narrative about what's going on, is basically lying to the American public. By some of the estimates that have been put out by, people like Douglas McGregor, etc., there is possibly in excess, either at or just a little over 1,000 American soldiers and personnel that may have been killed, and a lot more that have been injured. I was following this gentleman who lives out in Germany. He lives out in the city of Stuttgart, where one of the major U.S. military bases is located. And they say that most of the hospitals in the city of Stuttgart are just overflowing with injured Americans. And that the whole city of Stuttgart is in lockdown. The German press has been gagged, let alone the international press. So there's a lot more going on in the mainstream media of the United States. The legacy media is just not saying anything, which means that the average American should consider anything coming out of the mainstream media right now as nothing but military propaganda and censorship in a time of war. But Trump lost control of this war probably within the first 48 hours, and this genie is not going back. There has been numerous stories and reports of both Israel and the United States reaching out to the Iranians for a ceasefire, and the Iranians have refused. So Tel Aviv is being pummeled. The anti-missile and anti-aircraft batteries of the Israelis and the Americans in the regions has been completely depleted. Iran is starting to hit Israel at will. Meanwhile, Hezbollah, the Lebanese Hezbollah, has now entered the theater of war. About 100,000 Hezbollah fighters are fighting the Israelis in the northern border. There's even reports that battalions of Hezbollah have even invaded and made incursions within northern Israel itself. But the missiles that they're throwing at northern Israel. So Israel is now being pummeled by two sides, by the Iranians and Hezbollah simultaneously. The Houthis are about to enter, the Yemeni Houthis are about to enter. They said they're going to enter, so they're going to start to hit, throw missiles at Israel itself. Tel Aviv has been turned into Gaza, even with the tight military censorship that the Israelis have imposed on Israel as a whole. There is footage coming out. Tel Aviv looks exactly like Gaza. They've hit military instantly. They've hit Mossad. The head of Mossad was killed in a military strike earlier in the week. There are unconfirmed reports that maybe Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir, the defense minister, have also been killed, but nothing has been confirmed. Some people can consider it fake news, but we have not seen either Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir appear anywhere in the press for the last 3 or 4 days. So this is pretty serious. And the minimalist narratives that are coming out of the global media right now, mainstream media, are nonsense. So people should be listening, should probably go on YouTube and find, channels like Judge Napolitano's channel. He's got some good people that he brings on. Then there is Propaganda & Co., which is a Iraqi gentleman who runs a podcast, and he collates a lot of information from a lot of different places, and he's got a lot of good people working for him. So we know that's going on, and he's putting out good information. And if you get on Twitter or X, and if you find me, if you follow the retweets that I'm making and follow the people who are making them, you start to get a picture about what is happening. So we are in World War III with Mr. Trump having lost control of this war. Iranians are refusing ceasefire. Iran has been hit badly by both the Americans and the Israelis, but Israel itself is it's been tactically defeated. But give it another couple of days, and I think that place is literally, officially a parking lot. The Iranians have got stuff. So all these reports that they've depleted the Iranian missiles, and it's all bullshit. It's not true.
I saw that they killed the supreme leader of Iran. And I noticed that after that happened, the Iranian government, the Iranian government was like, no, we're not going to let you get away with that. You're going to have to deal with that, win, lose, or draw. we're definitely on your neck. However, I know that being that you're Iranian, what's your view on and I don't necessarily mean to ask this question, to spark any uh deprecating words or anything about the deceased. However, you're Iranian. I feel like you're within all right to speak to that particular point. So, how do you feel about the supreme leader's position of leadership and the action that he had taken prior to his death as in guiding the Iranian government and citizenry?
As I've said in numerous places in the past, I am not a supporter of the system. However, I don't believe that it is the business of the United States or Israel to determine what Iranians determine as their government. So while Iranians may have a debate and an argument and even revolution amongst themselves, it's not the business of Israel and the United States to to opportunistically, put their foot in here and try to determine the outcome of this. But I will say this: in killing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, what America did, it is effectively took out a moderate force, because it was Khamenei's fatwa that prevented Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And it was Khamenei who was holding back a lot of the more radical elements of the Iranian armed forces, and especially the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, right? He was the restraining, constraining hand. Now, his son has now been elected to the position that his father occupied. And Mujtaba Khamenei is known to be far more radical. And he also has a reason to go all out, because in that airstrike, which he was in the building that killed his father, but it also killed his mother and killed his wife and one of his children as well.
Oh my God!
In the airstrike that killed Ali Khamenei on the 28th of February. So now he has been elevated to the position of supreme leader. And although he's injured, and reports have come out that he is injured, he's in the hospital from that initial attack, but he's been elevated, and now he is going to very piecemeal take out all constraints. So Iran is probably going to now go for broke and go for the bomb, and they can probably create one or more of them within less than a couple of days. And now things got really, so the very thing that the Americans and Israelis were trying to prevent, they have now created a nuclear armed Iran. Since they are realizing that Iran is not going to buckle and that the system is not going to collapse this easily, they've been speculating and throwing this in the air. Maybe we need boots on the ground, but all the generals in the Pentagon and even strategists in Israel say this is impossible. That if we put this massive force of boots on the ground, they're going to be swallowed up within a few weeks. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not even Afghanistan. Even in Afghanistan, that is mountainous, the Americans had a lot of trouble. It took them 20 years to hand back Afghanistan back to the Taliban again. They didn't succeed in subduing the Taliban. Iran is much bigger than Afghanistan, and there are more potential traps all around Iran. Tehran itself is surrounded by the Alborz Mountains. So in order to take Tehran, troops would have to cross these mountains, the Zagros and Alborz Mountains, to get into Tehran proper. So it's a non-starter. These American troops or any proxies that they would try to use, they would be mowed down before they got anywhere near it. So this is a non-starter. So if that is the case, that means that this air campaign has been a failure. They have destroyed a lot of Tehran and a lot of cities throughout Iran. But they have also gotten a lot of black eyes. All the American military bases are practically destroyed. So Iran is basically trying to throw the American military presence out of the Middle East. They are now threatening to hit data centers of IBM, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, etc. And this is like big corporate investments that these companies have made in the Middle East and in the Gulf. And if Iran starts to hit all of those, these companies are going to start to lose billions of dollars in damages, right? So Iran right now is in a position calling the shots. They've also closed the Strait of Hormuz and now are threatening that if either military or any American oil tankers tried to cross the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to take them down. So they're mining that part of the Strait of Hormuz, and they say that they will allow Chinese and Russian ships to cross. And they're also saying that any country that now expels the American military presence in the region, their ships can also cross. More than likely, the Houthis are not going to step in to kind of oversee this because the Iranians are needing to have their focus on Israel and these American military bases. But effectively, the Iranians have given the biggest black eye to empire that empire has ever faced. And this has been a long time coming. Wherever this goes, the fight that the Iranians put against empire has been like nothing else. And they get all the kudos in the world. I am not, a supporter of the Wilayat al-Faqih system of the guardianship of the jurisprudence of the Islamic Republic. I've been in opposition pretty much consistently for 30 years, but I give credit where credit is due. These cats have done what nobody before them has done. This is something historic that they have done. They calculated this very precisely. They prepared for this for 20 years. They built their military, internal military missile and drone technology over this 20-year period to a level unseen. So these Iranian drones and Shahed missiles are giving the Americans and Israelis out. I mean, like I said, Israel is almost at the point of being a parking lot right now. They've hit corporate buildings, military buildings, residential areas, and the Israelis have done the same, right? Israel, for what the strategy has been that every time Israel has crossed the red line and started hitting civilians, Iranians have emulated, but they've allowed the Israelis and the Americans to take the first, take the first punch. Once that red line is crossed, Iran hits as well.
It seems like they took the Islamic approach. We won't be the aggressors, but we'll definitely fight those who fight us. Absolutely.
Approach.
One thing people don't understand is that, and I've met quite a few people who don't really understand that this is Persia we're talking about, and when we look back into the history, it may not be necessarily what it used to be in the sense of social structure, even in the sense of, I would say, cultural and spiritual influence. However, those lines are still there. Those roots are still there. So what do you think is also, let's just, what you think is being caught? Because we know wars are not only fought on the ground. They're not only fought with airplanes, guns, and etc. That we know there's things that are happening behind the scenes and things that are happening in private and behind closed doors in secret chambers of masters who know, the time and the climb of what we're particularly experiencing. So do you think possibly that those things are going on too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we know, and Propaganda and Co. made a video a couple of nights ago on this. We know that this sect of Judaism, the Lubavitchers or the Chabad, have control of Trump. And this is a very right-wing, messianic Jewish cult. I mean, if you go to New York City, you'll see the picture of their late Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson all over parts of New York. They believe that by starting a war like this, that this will usher in the coming of their Messiah and that they can rebuild the temple. So they're looking at it from that angle. Okay?
Yes.
I don't think Trump as a religious or eschatological bone in his body. The man is just a dumbass opportunist. White crap. That's all he is. So, but these people have an agenda. But this is the thing. You can't control these sorts of things. Even if you read your Bible, you can't.
Right.
There's always an unknown element to these sorts of wars that the Israelis themselves fought. And right now, they are tasting God's wrath rather than God's mercy, these Israelis. So if they thought that they could bring their Messiah and they rebuilt their temple and then they conquer and control the whole of the Middle East. They want to implement their Greater Israel project. This is now going south very fast for Israel. They're being weakened every day that this goes on. They're being weakened, right? And if the Iranians have actually managed to kill Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and the head of Mossad, as as the rumors say, then this is very serious. This means that the Iranians have taken out significant portions of the Israeli leadership. The population locally has been terrorized, right? This, in the long term, that means that investment is going to start to flow out of Israel. It already has been since 2023, since October 7th. But now this is going to accelerate. So what Iran is basically doing is ending that settler colony, and whether, even if the war stops right at this very moment, the use-by date of Israel is now here, literally.
I mean, damage has been done. The damage has been done. Yes, sir. Damage has been done. So, and talking about what's going on with all of that being going on, and I know that oil, finance, all of these things on the forefront of why these things are going on. But however, you just pointed to a scenario or a degree in which they're trying to push the coming of their Messiah, etc. Now, here goes the thing. Even their Bible, even their holy book says no man knows the time, right? However, we know we've had the masterminds throughout the times and the climes that have used, certain esoteric and occult means to basically place a pinpoint on particular times and draw circles around particular cycles that could possibly allude to that time. But what we're seeing right now is an effort to force things to come into particular conditions or play out relatively, the way we look at it, the way it is basically before it's supposed to happen. So we can't even, I don't see how they could even think that will work out for them, even according to their own scriptures. But that's neither here nor there.
See, what they're doing, this is how I see it. What these messianic sects, Judaism, whether we're talking about the Lubavitchers or whether we're talking about their ancestors like the Frankists and the Sabbatians, they think that they can actually force the hand of God, right? But what is really happening is that they're playing the role of the Nimrod with the Tower of Babel when they do things like this. They think they can build a tower that reaches God and they can shoot an arrow into the sky that can puncture God. But that's not how it works. And God will react. The All High will always react, and not in the way they expect, right? As the Quran says, they plot and God plots, and God is the greatest of all plotters. And so, sure, they can try to bring out the Messiah, but the Messiah may not come in the way that they expect. It may come from a place that they do not expect at all. This is the way and what's, on what basis do they think that any anointed of God that comes to this world is going to validate them after everything that they have done? In what universe do they think that this is the case? This is the problem with their thinking.
Right.
But I think that they can force God to bring the anointed one, and then that will bring all matters on this planet to a head, and then they can have their civilization. The Christians are thinking along the same lines. They are literally, these dispensationalist, Protestants think that they can literally force Jesus's second coming. Yet the book, in the Bible itself, it says no man knows the time. He comes as a thief in the night, right? So, these people have a problem of faith, really, is the thing. And they're trying to force God, but God is not going to be forced. And, God is the one who forces. And whatever Messiah comes, it's not going to be in the way anybody expects, because this is also the way that God rolls. He's not,
Absolutely.
the Almighty is not playing by people's expectations. People should put their expectations in God rather than, the narrative about what this thing is going to be.
So, thinking along that line, right? Now we go right back to a conversation, and I'm pretty sure you're well studied. So, in the speak straight to it. In our American expression of Islam, we've had teachers of the liking. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if America, and I don't like to paraphrase the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but for this particular condition, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali paraphrased and said that if we don't learn to live by the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, the worst is yet to come. And yes, that he was speaking to the American citizenry and the government at that particular time. However, we got to look at that on the world stage too. We got to look at that on the world stage. If the world doesn't learn to love instead of hate, the worst is yet to come. Because no living thing, all living things are bound by course to all other living things. No man lives unto himself. So when it's like throwing a rock or a pebble out into the middle of the pond, it causes a ripple throughout the whole pond, all the way out into the outer bounds of life, right? So now when we throw these particular thoughts and we do these particular things and have these particular intentions, what happens is it sends a thrill to the outer bounds of life and it causes things to transpire. Now, I don't know if they're not seeing this, but let's say Elijah Muhammad, right? Elijah Muhammad was known to have in his mosque, who's going to win the war of Armageddon? And on one side he would have the crescent moon and star, and the other side he would have the cross of Christianity. And he would have the flag of Islam, and then he would have the flag of America. Right? We're seeing this right now. We're seeing this right now. And I see a lot of Americans, we're duped by the propaganda. We're duped by the propaganda, and we think that just because it's America, that it's right, that you should stand behind it because it's America, right? But in truth telling, we know we speak truth, even if it condemns us. So at the end of the day, how should, from your standpoint, being an Iranian, right? Because you deal with the corruption that happens there. But from your standpoint, being an Iranian, how do you feel like Americans should actually be looking at this?
Americans need to be looking at this from a far deeper perspective than they are. I mean, there are a lot of good Americans, who are, people who are active, a lot of podcasters and YouTubers that I follow. Some of them are really good, patient people. Yourself, your community. So there are good Americans. The problem is that the mainstream of America has actually believed in the propaganda that their system has fed them for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. They don't realize that actually in this particular conflict, and probably the conflict since the end of the Second World War, that they are the bad guys. And in this particular instance, it's very blatant. Iran didn't start a war. The United States was not under any threat by the Iranians. Trump and Netanyahu started this war, or rather, Trump started this war on the prodding of Netanyahu and whatever blackmail that the Israelis made of Trump and his family. So this is the war started. This was a war of aggression. It was a war crime. It was, all of the things that Nuremberg said that it was wanting to stop. Donald J. Trump started with Iran. A war of aggression, unprovoked. So this is what most Americans need to look at, that in this particular saga, America stands where Nazi Germany did. So America, and Donald Trump is the current Hitler. Just like, in September 1939, unprovoked, Hitler attacked Poland and ignited the Second World War. Mr. Donald Trump has done exactly the same thing where Iran is concerned. But the difference between Poland and Iran is that this time the stupidity of the American leadership is at the level of Hitler when he invaded Russia in June 1941. So this is going to prove the biggest military blunder since Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union and got his backside handed to him in less than 4 years. So this is what we're up against. This is what the American people need to realize, that they have also brought about the destruction of the American empire themselves by putting this jackass in the White House in the first place, and also by not being vigilant in holding this SOB to the so-called American Constitution that is not being even observed by this guy or some of his predecessors. And the American public is going to taste the bitter fruit of this, especially now as the price of oil is climbing, as Iran has closed the Straits of Hormuz, right? Most average Americans are going to feel the pain of this war that this current American president started in their pocketbooks. More expensive gas, more expensive public transportation. Your food is going to start getting more expensive as inflation climbs as a result of this. On and on and on. This creates a spiral of more crime and more this and more that. This is not going to end well for the United States itself. It is not. It is creating a global economic catastrophe as we speak. It's not something that the Iranians did. This is something that Mr. Donald J. Trump started. He is the culprit. So if there are any patriots, whether in the United States, government or outside, they need to, in my opinion, they need to think about taking matters into their own hands and get this clown out of there, right? The guy is all over the place, but because of the executive power that he has in his hands as president, he from one moment to the next he's making decisions on the whim. He can't make decisions on a whim. Everything that is happening right now should have been game planned. They should have set down for months, game planning all the possibilities that could emerge, and then made a decision. But this guy just made a decision on whim. And all this time that Benjamin Netanyahu has been traveling from Israel to the United States proves the pressure that Trump was being put under by this Netanyahu and not listening to his own people within that administration. We have rumors, for example, that J.D. Vance is against this, as vice president. We have reports that, what's her name, that former congressman from Hawaii, who's now head of the DIA, or Defense Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, she's against it. She actually went before Congress last year saying that there's reports, that we don't have any reports that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, right? But yet, this was one of the pretexts that this war went ahead, that Mr. Donald J. Trump pushed the button on it. So this guy is incompetent. He's dangerous, not just to the world, but also to the Americans themselves. And he's proven it. This whole ICE thing has proven it. The guy has no respect for law. His own hand-picked Supreme Court has now ruled against his tariffs, right? That he's overstepped, that Donald Trump has overstepped his mandated authority as president. So, in my opinion, there needs to be a revolution in America, and this guy needs to be taken out of there. He needs to leave. I don't think people in America realize the gravity of the situation, that if you have this monkey sitting in the White House for another couple of months, that your whole way, the way of life that it is as it is right now, is going to unravel.
And you make some valid points, right? Especially in the site of leadership, right? You're talking about a man who has engaged the country in war, who never been in the military himself, and never had to fight, not one time a day in his life. So when you have those type of individuals with such an ego that he has in a position of power with the ability to press a button or etc as it pertains to military force and has no understanding of military force and the results and the consequences and the repercussions that fall upon the citizens of the very country that you're supposed to be governing or be at the head of governing. And that always that blew me. You know what I'm saying? That ones would actually vote for someone who has no experience in government, no experience in military. So you have no track record in the said field in which one's are voting you into. So I mean, what else could we expect? We've seen nothing but but um antics and entertainment and bro, I mean, a lot of citizens really talk about the couple dollars that they received when he came into office. But what is that? Now, what does it mean?
Nothing. Means nothing.
Now, what does it mean? Because what you're about to see is things go back to horse and buggy days because the economy is going to get so bad. And honest to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who said that in 1928, that one day it's going to go back to horse and buggy days. And I can see that coming. Whether I live to see it or not, I see that coming because, look, it's pointing straight towards the things that were required, that are required for those things to transpire. So, I mean, it's amazing that we vote this guy into office. And then now ones are like, wow, look at this. Look at that. But this is the very individual that makes public antics that, bro, are very unconstitutional. It's basically unconstitutional. And you do it in public, in front of the citizenry, with no consequences and repercussions. What do we have going on here? And you expect him to deal justly with anybody else in the world when he doesn't even deal with his own citizenry justly? It's just amazing, and looking at and back to the kid the death of the supreme leader of Iran. It's arrogant of him to even ask for a ceasefire after that happened. Like, do you expect that? Or was that just something, we're just gonna throw a Hail Mary and hope we hit the shot?
Well, obviously, oil companies, big corporations, the leaders of these Gulf countries are pushing, and they also urge Trump not to do this to begin with. They all urged him, don't do this. It's going to upset everything. This could go south very fast.
Even China said that.
Even China said that. Russia said that. The Gulf sheikhs said that. Saudi Arabia said that. It was only Israel, Netanyahu, and this cabal of extremist Chabad Lubavitcher criminals that hold that place right now. They wanted this thing to happen, right? And now they're getting pummeled. Israel it has absorbed over 700 missile hits, well over it, since this war began. That's a lot. And that, just remember, Israel is a small parcel of land in Lebanon. It's not big.
Not
you can
big at
travel
all.
from you can travel from top northern Israel to southern Israel in a couple of hours by car. Okay, so this stupidity itself is alone for this derelict to be thrown out of the White House immediately, because right now the American Republic, it's under serious threat, but it's also in the hands of an incompetent fool who's whimsical, who's not listening to anybody. He thinks he knows everything, and this is how he's screwing up the planet. So Mr. Trump is not only a public enemy number one to the American public, he's enemy number one to the world right now. He needs to be taken out of there. That doesn't mean that with Trump gone, that the American military and establishment and military industrial complex is going to stop being what it's always been. Those people are scum as well. But if you put more level hands, this can de-escalate, and maybe the damage can be repaired to some level. It will take a while, long time.
Oh yeah, it most definitely take a while.
This cracker's got to go.
And I mean, brother, let's look at it. I mean, we could talk about we could talk about the repair, right? But we gotta realize that's after the fact. We better hope there is something to repair. That's what we better help, because this could get real ugly. Just like we were just speaking on the back chat before we came on. Brother, this has the potential to turn the whole world against America. The entire world. And let's think about it. In the history of America, which is not that old, they never fought a foreign entity on American soil. We don't even know what that's like.
Well, the last time you did in 1812, in the War of 1812, the British marched into Washington, D.C. and burnt down the Capitol and the White House.
Okay.
The War of 1812. That was the last time there were foreign troops on U.S. soil.
You're right.
So, but this time, right? And
in this generation,
if you get a foreign power, a foreign army in U.S. sub, which I don't think it's going to happen yet, but let's assume it does, the devastation would be unbelievable. But I think you don't even need that at this point, because what you're witnessing also is that a lot of Americans are waking up, and they're also starting to realize that, well, maybe we made a mistake. I mean, a lot of MAGA, I'm just reading the chatter online, a lot of MAGA are turning against this guy. I mean, that crazy racist out in Chicago, what's his name? He's got his own show. I can't remember his name right now, but he's telling a lot of his own MAGA followers not to vote for anyone but the Democrats come the midterm election. That's unprecedented.
Absolutely.
Tucker Carlson on the talk show every day. He's practically denouncing Trump, questioning the policies. He's lampooned all these neocons, from Ted Cruz to the current ambassador of America to Israel. So the heartland itself is angry. And once the economic consequences of this folly are start to feel in their pocketbooks, and when they start to feel the pain, they're going to turn on Trump with a fury that he cannot imagine. And that's coming very, very soon. We're not talking about months or years, we're talking about weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if the war stops right now, right? You need to, first of all, fix all of these oil installations in the Gulf that have been hit by Iranian missiles. That's going to take months, a lot of investment, right? They're going to demine the Strait of Hormuz. That's going to take a long time, especially because these mines are moving. They're they're ocean, they're not just stationary, right?
Right.
That's going to take a while as well. Then there is the futures market itself that has already been spooked. In order to get a futures market to kind of calm down, that's going to take a lot of guarantees that that we're not going to go into another escalating situation. So you're looking at, if the war stops right at this moment, probably sometime towards the end of next year, where things will go back to normal economically. But right now, as the situation is spiking, this is very scary territory for anybody who's following these markets closely. This is implosion territory. But I mean, there's a silver lining here. That means that the American economic stranglehold over this planet is also ending. So, the Chinese are probably looking at this and rubbing their hands in glee that de-dollarization is coming sooner than they expected.
Absolutely. Everybody in the chat, we see y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for the support, the comments. Please hit the like button. Please hit that like button. Please hit that like button. And if you can, please share this to your social media. Share so you can keep the people aware. Bring the people along into the dialogue. We are, inshallah, Brother Sharif Anael-Bey will be in shortly. And also, if you can, support the channel, support the Cash App, support the Super Chat, support the Super Thanks, support the Super Sticker. If you have any questions, Super Chat them. And inshallah, maybe here in a short few minutes, we could bring some people up if you have any questions to ask about what we're speaking about. And if you want to add your perspective into as to this conversation. Now, so, Brother Azal, when it comes, because we see we put prophecy, rumors of wars and rumors of wars. When we start to talk about prophecy and things that have been foreseen and foretold about the events that are going on now, because these events have been spoken about, right? Can you give some insight from that particular angle as to what's going on now for those who may, because see, everybody doesn't follow it from a let's say a world news standpoint. You know what I mean? Some people are looking at this from a very scriptural and spiritual sight. You know what I'm saying? And not allowing what they see and hear to make them fear. So if you could give us some insight on prophecies that you may know, that you're aware of, that can shed light on what's going on right now.
Well, from the Shiite angle, there are a lot of prophecies that fit the current time. There's one particular one that is attributed to the sixth Imam, Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he describes an age so corrupt, very similar to the one that we have now. One of the things that he instances, for example, is that men will act like women and women will act like men. Children will not respect their parents. These are some of the characterizations. And he says that it is at such a time where the forces of the Sufyani, this is the predecessor of the Dajjal, will emerge, right? And he talks about a great cataclysm. War and rumors of wars are part of this hadith narrative. He talks about, the destruction of Damascus, which has happened, over the last decade. So these are the sorts of things that we're looking at. That these are turning out to be literal. There are hadith that when the Jews attack Isfahan, or when there's one that Jews emerge from Isfahan, or the Jews attack Isfahan. Isfahan was just attacked 3 days ago by cluster bombs. Some of these Safavid mosques, beautiful, they were absolutely gorgeous mosques, have been destroyed. So when the Jews attack Isfahan, that is the first call of the coming of the Mahdi. Right? And that this war between the forces of light and darkness is about to begin. And this has happened. And then yesterday, over the holy city of Qom, which is where all the seminaries are located, and also several military installations, some kind of a bomb was dropped. Now, it could have been a tactical nuke, or it could have been a massive cluster bomb of some description, but the mushroom cloud that formed on the outskirts of this town was something ferocious. So the Israelis have gone there, okay? And this itself is triggering certain things, in my opinion. Now, where prophecies are concerned, prophecies are extremely tricky things.
Yes,
And
sir.
it is not always apparent what level should be interpreted symbolically, what facet of it needs to be read on multiple levels and unpacked, what layer of a prophecy is actually deliberately trying to mislead from the truth. These things all occur within prophecies, right? So
Absolutely.
one has to be very, very, you have to, rather than taking prophecies literally and trying to match a prophecy to actual world events, I think we need to look at both the events and the prophecies from different kind of symbolic registers. Okay, but the period that is described in several Shia hadith are describing our time.
Most definitely, man. The Prophet Noble Jew Ali also speaks about, especially because see, that speaks directly to, to Iranian, prophecies that affect the Iranian people. Um, However, the Prophet Noble Jew Ali also told us that one day blood will fill the streets up to a horse's brow. And whether the mentality or the wherewithal of the American citizenry could handle such a reality, um, allow either, because we've been conditioned so long. We're the nation with the silver spoon, and when it comes to particular hardships and realities, we're not in tune with them. We're not in tune with them. So I'm the prophet most definitely continuously talked to us about getting ready and not being forced to do so. He spoke about, you know, reserving and preserving a 90-day food supply of food and water. He spoke about preparing for these particular times that would come, but yet and still, do we truly believe that these times are coming? Or we are caught up in the illusion that has been fed to us that this American society is the superpower that'll never fall? And when we read through the annals of human history, that empires rise and they fall. If an empire rises, it's a guarantee it will fall. When and where, that's up for question. That's up for debate. But however, it's most definitely a guarantee that if the nation or empire rises, it will fall. And 9 times out of 10, it falls from the inside out because of its failure to adhere to the laws of justice, reciprocity, and equality. So, I mean, I, you know, I can have faith that some of us are ready, some of us are being prepared, some of us are taking seriously the things that they're looking at and seeing, and not being caught up necessarily in the fear of it, but in the okay, well, it's gonna happen. Let's prepare for it so we can survive it. And I don't know. Our people talk a good game. We talk good. We're the best entertainers in the world. So, at this point, I just continuously place things in the course of the divine and trust that I'm being guided to be prepared. You know what I'm saying? And I'm guiding my people, my family, my friends, my loved ones, and my community, that we're being guided and I'm assisting in guiding, the people. So, man, this is a very sticky situation, man. And
Very
as I
sticky.
look at it, because I'm not the most when it comes to paying attention to news outlets, etc. Because I'm very wary of news outlets anyway. So I'm on YouTube like you. I'm listening to certain YouTubes that I feel like are being genuine and honest. They're not being disingenuous as to the dissemination of the information. And that's why I want to keep you on. As long as this is going on, we're going to continue to do this series. We're going to continue to come back. We're going to continue to document what's going on, because I feel as though it's going to be, after we've left this plane of things made manifest, and we've departed our flesh, that these videos could possibly still be up and people could learn from the details of what's going on now, so they don't make the same mistakes. And I think that's what the masterminds who have come to us has always told us. And that word that we're always taught in Islam is called remembrance, to remember, to call memory to and aid. And not only do we remember Allah, we remember Allah and all his dealings with the human affairs. So we can see how things are transpiring and will transpire. And in our faith tradition, it says that the masterminds measure time by cycle ages. What do we mean by cycle ages? That we'll be in the same space that we're in now again. But it's not about being in the space, it's about how we deal with being in the space. This particular pocket of time, this particular pocket or point in the circle. We'll be here again. But how will you deal with it? Is the question. You see what I'm saying? What will you do different? How will you learn from previous histories? How will you learn from previous cycles? And that kind of makes me think about in the Quran when Allah told the angels, right? And I'm going to create a vicegerent, right? I'm going to create a vicegerent in the land. And the angel said, are you going to create something that will cause bloodshed in the land? But here goes the question. If Allah knows not, but what, if the angel knows not, but what Allah tells them, right? What did they know about bloodshed? What did they know? This is supposed to be the first man, right? This is the first man. What do you know about bloodshed? Who has been in the land to create bloodshed and mischief prior to this being that Allah is calling the vicegerent that he's willing to set in the land? What do you know about that?
There's many ways to interpret that narrative of the Quran about the creation of Adam and the angels. One narrative that all the Ismailis and Batini sects of Islam have read it is that this doesn't mean the creation of the first human. This is talking about the creation of a insan or a human in a particular cycle who is a vicegerent.
Yes.
Which means a prophet, messenger, saint, awliya, or the way that the Sufis use the word insan al-kamil, the perfect human. So this is, and Ibn Arabi has a very interesting way of interpreting this story of the Quran as well. So who are these angels that are questioning God? Well, they can't be the higher archangels, because these higher archangels are, and God says, Allah says, who do you think you are? He says it to Iblis when he questions God. Are you amongst the high ones? Min al-alun. And who are the high ones? The high ones are the archangels. So they're on, they're on the same page with Allah subhanahu. It is these lower level angels. So who can they be? They're terrestrial beings that are questioning God for elevating a person to the same status, to that status as the vicegerent of God on earth. In the structure of thinking about time in esoteric Shiism, there is no single beginning of the world with the first man. There are cycles of time with prophets who inaugurate them.
Yes.
Right? So that what the Quran is talking about in this interpretation is talking about the first prophet of a cycle.
Hey, yo, that is a deep measure. Honestly, gratitude for the super chat. From let me see. From MKD Podcast 8569. Honors and gratitude for the $2 super chat. Yes. Honors and gratitude for the $2 super chat. That's a very time measured by cycle. Yes, sir. And what you demonstrated, Sheikh, is demonstrating the fact that there was time never was when man was not. And man, that's a man. And that speaks directly to the teaching, that in the Quran questionnaire, it also teaches us that who are Adam and Eve? Their mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatic and Muslim. So that again points to cycles, and there being multiple Adams and Eves. And that just adds a whole perspective is everything, Brother Sheikh. Perspective and perception is everything. And when we have, when perception begins to be altered in any area along the circle, guess what it does? It sends the measurement or the mathematical precision of the circle off. So yeah,
let me
man.
give you a kind of a citation of a hadith, a Shiite hadith by the fifth Imam, Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam. He was asked about Adam and Eve. And he responds, he says, do you think that this is the only world that God created? God has created thousands and thousands of worlds and thousands of atoms, and you're only on the last of it, amongst the last of these.
Wow. Wow. Whoa. And man, that just brings brother, see, even the concept of esotericism, and we're going somewhere else with this, but it's all comes full circle. When it comes to the conversation of esotericism, and let's say common thinking, because common people who think commonly or perceive commonly, they see in a linear time, not a cyclical time. So that just that saying that you're of the last of the Adam and Eve, that'll crush a person's whole perception of the world.
The word that he uses can also be read as the most recent, meaning that this continues. It's not going to end.
and what it tends to make you, it makes you ponder the evolution of humanity. Because I mean, it's you're from you're Iranian, you're from Persian. You know what I'm saying? And you know about technologies that from ancient times that are more technologically advanced than technology these days. So that within itself speaks about the rise and fall of an expansion of the expansion and the constriction of consciousness in the cycles of humanity. You know what I'm saying? There's times where the humanity's consciousness is like this. And then it cycles and times within the circle where it comes back like this. And we're expanding and we're constricting. We're expanding and constricting. So just the notion of that, to ponder that for a common person would be like, huh? Like, what? Like, you know, some people honestly think that we're in the most technologically advanced age that humanity has ever been in. And we're talking about wars, right? Conversation is about wars. We know there have been wars that have been fought in India, aerial spacecrafts, nuclear wars in India that have turned whole geographical locations in India, the ground and the soil to glass, and it's still that way and radioactive today. And this has been thousands and thousands of
Yeah,
years.
in the Vedic scriptures, there's a lot of stuff that is very difficult to explain. If you take it literally, I mean, these gods, Hindu gods, are riding on spaceships. If you read it exactly as it's written down. So yeah, there were events, and it's very possible that humanity's civilization at certain points were far more advanced in certain respects. But what we understand by even what technology is very limited. We look
Right.
at we look at technology over the last 300-400 years as a form of gadgetry, right? So the digital technology that we look at today, to us, is like the peak of technological development of the human species. But we still cannot explain how is it that a people about 3,000-4,000 years ago in Egypt could have erected with these massive blocks of stone the pyramids, or how old the actual age of the Sphinx is. Some are putting it at over 5,000 years old, and not the common dating that some archaeologists have put. But the Egyptian civilization itself in the Old Kingdom, and what they were capable of doing, defies any explanation so far offered. So obviously these folks were working with certain technologies that they had at their disposal that look different to what we understand by what technology was technology, and very advanced. In mathematics, in astrology and astronomy, the fact that with no instruments, they were able to chart the stars in the way that they did. I mean, the calendar of Dandara by the ancient Egyptians is one of the most accurate astronomical calendars ever devised. The Dandara calendar. And, they can't explain this stuff. So, I've read quite a bit of literature on this in Egyptology, and the secular modern scholars of Egyptology, they put all this information out, but then they try to minimize it and interpret it in certain ways that tries to restrain any kind of conclusion that one might reach about what this represents. Same with some of these civilizations in Mesoamerica, the Toltecs, the Olmecs, the Mayans, etc. These were very advanced people. Their cosmologies were very advanced. Their architecture, engineering was extremely advanced. They didn't have the kind of tools that we have, but then yet they managed to erect the kind of structures that we see are still standing after almost 1,000, plus years. So technology is a very relative thing, and what we understand by what technology is and isn't is a very relative thing. And here in Australia, amongst these native Aboriginal people, they themselves possess an extremely subtle technology of the land that just defies understanding amongst native peoples. They managed this land for 40,000 years. They believe that they've been here for over 40,000 plus years, some of them even longer than that, 70,000 years, right? Until the white man landed on these shores, they managed the flora and fauna. Most of Australia was not this desert wasteland that it is today. And even in the desert wastelands in the middle of this country, there were many nations that were living in these places, managing the land, surviving, building communities that lasted for thousands and thousands of years. Right?
Absolutely.
That is technology. However you want to define it.
Absolutely, Shay. Honestly, gratitude to Muhammad Rahal for the $20 super chat. He says, peace, light be upon those who follow the guided path The night of power destiny is closer to us than our jugular veins.
That is true. It's here tonight. Yeah.
Here tonight. And for all those who are observing Ramadan, observing the night of power, participating in the practices and the worships, I extend my honors to you, and I trust and pray that Allah blesses your efforts and blesses your worship, blesses your sacrifices, and blesses the sacrifices you have made throughout this month. And may Allah continue to bless you in your sacrifices. This one has definitely been a challenging one for me. I don't know why, but I do know why. You know what I'm saying? But Allah, why? You know what I'm saying? All is well. Speaking of technology, let's talk about, before we get off, because this could very much speak to, because allow me to say this: if we think Islam and Christianity and Judaism are not playing a part in some type of way in this war that we have going on, that we've been talking about since we opened the floor, the platform, we think none of these things have its place, I think you're asleep. Okay. So now I wanted to get to the Islamic richness of Persia. Because, you know, as I study Islamic history, right, you have those who, when we start speaking about Persia, they would say, some of them say, they are bid'ah, you know what I'm saying? Innovation, this. But when I look at it, I see a very rich mystical current. Very rich mystical current that runs through Persia.
A lot of science and philosophy came out of Iranian Muslims.
Yes, sir.
A lot of mathematics as we know it today, especially algebra, was the development of an Iranian Muslim. Yeah. Philosophy, you know, most of the Islamic philosophers were Iranians. The first one was Al-Kindi, who was actually an Iraqi, but after him, most of the major Iranian philosophers and theologians were all, Islamic philosophers and theologians were all Iranians. So there's been a sort of a racial rivalry, and it's not completely innocent on either side, between Arabs and Iranians pretty consistently since Islam came to Iran. Part of the reason is that the Arabs didn't completely shed their own, tribal notions of superiority with Islam. The Shiites did, not the Arabs. So this is one of the tragedies that, this is one of the subtexts of the Sunni Shia divide, is that in the early centuries, while the Shiites were kind of the opposition party, the Sunni, and especially through the Bani Umayyad, who were originally the enemies of the Prophet, when they took over as the Umayyad dynasty, they tried to revive this concept of asabiya, which means that the superiority of the Arabs, the very ideology that the Quraysh had been living with, they tried to revive it through the Umayyad years. And this immediately created this division between what they called the Mawalid, the clients, and these Arabs. So they were discriminating, these non-Arab Muslims. But then that created its own pushback and eventually led to the fall of the Umayyad dynasty with the rise of the Abbasids. But this mentality, especially amongst a lot of the Khaliji Arabs, the Gulf Arabs, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, even the Omanis to some extent, is still around. And they have this superiority complex, about themselves. And but the Shiites don't roll that way. So the Shiite message is much more egalitarian in that sense, that it embraces people regardless of their origin and their race, and shuns this Arab asabiya. But we got a problem, because that there are elements of Iranian nationalism that were basically engineered during the 20th century that kind of flow into very racist areas. This insistence by some of these people that Iranians are really Aryans that are kind of trapped in the Middle East. It's all nonsense, but a lot of this diaspora community believes in this nonsense, right? And this is why they're beating their chest for Trump right now, some of these people. So this stuff is there, unfortunately. But in the original Shiite message, and even in the message of the Islamic Revolution originally, this egalitarian, universal brotherhood message was very much pronounced, which is the very core message of Islam itself. But today, a lot of these Gulf Arab sheikhdoms are still clinging on to this notion of asabiya, of their superiority and their racial, dominance over other people who are Muslims. And you see this in the way they treat, like, for example, people from the subcontinent. A lot of Indians and Pakistanis go to the Gulf to work there. They end up becoming practical slaves, to the Saudis. I had a Sudanese brother, used to be friends with here. He's moved away now, but when he had left the Sudan in the late 80s, he had gone to Saudi Arabia and he became basically a servant in the household of one of these Saudi royal princes. And, he told me the stories about how he was abused and discriminated and whatnot. But the corruption stories that he told me about these Saudi princes was unbelievable. He told me that every Ramadan, he would sit, my friend, in a massive trailer truck, get him to drive all the way to the Emirates from Riyadh, and fill this truck full of alcohol and come back to Riyadh, so that this prince could sit the whole of Ramadan and drink himself into a stupor. Now, that's haram. But this is the mentality of a lot of these Gulf Arabs, especially their ruling families, are extremely hypocritical in the kind of Islam that they practice. They preach this puritanical version of Islam outwardly, but inwardly in their own homes and with the riches and everything, they are complete munafiqun. They're complete hypocrites in every sense. So that means that the mentality that the Prophet of Islam himself fought, this jahiliyyah, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, was confronted against, never really died amongst these Arabs. And even the Quran says, verse in the Quran that says, "Al-Arabu ashaddu kufran wa nifaq." The Arabs are the most intense in infidelity and hypocrisy. Right? This is the Quran speaking. This stuff is still unfortunate. That doesn't mean all Arabs, but we're talking mainly of ruling classes and people like that. So, African American, Black American Muslims need to be attuned to this, because there is a lot of this discriminatory rhetoric that sometimes comes out of mosques or is coming from that angle. That's the point of it.
That's a very critical thing, because not saying that us Asiatic Muslims, so-called Black Muslims in America, are ignorant in any type of sense in the Islamic in sense of Islamic information. However, a lot still have a sense of having inferior complex in the sense of the Islamic religion because of their reverence for Arabs. A lot of times, and to be honest, I'm accused of that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you trying to be an Arab? Well, I mean, that's what you perceive. You know what I'm saying? That's what you perceive to be Arabism. You know what I'm saying? And that's all and well. That we all have our our perspectives, our perception. But I must say that what you see them, those whom once considered Arab, right? They may consider them Arab. But however, we know those are somewhat imposters, invaders. And I'm one of the ones who feel as though what they have is the culture of my forefathers. And when I wear it, I don't wear it to be like them. I wear it to be like those to be like those whom they usurped it from. So I'm not, it comes from a lack of understanding from some people, and then some people it just comes from, you know, they stand firm on their Americanism. You know what I'm saying? And I don't knock that either. You know what I'm saying? I don't knock that either. You really are who you say you are, and I feel as though one should be comfortable in that. But this inferiority complex to what we perceive to be Arabs these days is a problem. It is a
Is a
problem.
huge problem.
It is
You
a
get it
problem.
also, you get this also with Iranian Turks as well, inferiority complex. See, when I was in America, I especially when I went to college, I figured this out pretty quickly. And luckily, alhamdulillah, I was living in a place, that was quite diverse, New Mexico, in Albuquerque.
Okay.
This is in the 90s. So it's Latino, Hispanic, Native American. I had a lot of Latino Hispanic friends. And so the America I got to experience in college was a very ethnic one.
Mm-hmm.
And so the stories and the narratives and the experiences of these people about the America that they lived in really influenced my thinking. My first real girlfriend when I entered college was a Native American Navajo girl, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And her family and their perspective, they had been involved in the 1960s with AIM, the American Indian movement. They had been in Wounded Knee, for example, in 1972. So they had that entire perspective on the other side. And that got me to look at America after I left New Mexico through completely different eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most immigrants, Arab, Iranian, Turks, whatever, that come to America that don't have that perspective have a lot of peer pressure by the dominant white culture of that land to become to absorb and become like them, right? And unless you have this other perspective that you realize that itself is a false narrative, that's the devil's own narrative. It's very difficult not to get sucked into it. That's why you have a lot of Iranians and Turks being more white and more whiter than white, more Casper than Casper. That's one of the things. Just get this amongst immigrant communities because there's no self-reflection, and what that system in America or even in Europe or here in Australia does by default is the first thing it tries to do is to strip you of your identity. This is why the story of Nation of Islam, the story of Malcolm X resonates with me, because I have experienced what that egregore does to people who are from somewhere else. It demands that you strip yourself of who you are, of your very soul, and just completely acquiesce to it on an existential, without even speaking it. It demands it, and that is the devil itself, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So once you have a different perspective, when you hang out with Native Americans and Latino communities, those are your friends and that's your community, right? Then you get to see who the devil is, who the real devil is.
Absolutely. And when one don't understand it, the devil comes in an image of pure light too. You know what I'm saying? He wants to assume that particular characteristic and cast the illusion that this is of divine origin. And we look, when we look at this European dealings, you know what I'm saying? Even when in the advent of slavery and the use of papal bulls to give divine decree to some of the most hideous and horrendous acts that humanity has ever seen, experienced, and witnessed, that just shows if that ain't the devil, I mean, what,
If that ain't the devil, I don't know what is. I mean, the first thing that it demands is that you hate who you are. You hate the color of your skin. You hate your hair. And then it just works itself through that. And so for years, you look at a lot of these immigrant communities and they have this very weird schizophrenic thing about them because they're living in a dominant culture that is telling them to hate themselves. The price for you to be accepted is to hate who you are. in these colonial settler white societies. That is the price. But even if you do hate who you are, they will still treat you like shit. They will still treat you as unequal and not one of them. So no matter how much you know, no matter how white you become, you're still, to them, at least I am forever, the sand nigger. No matter how white I become. And I take that with pride. I am. Motherfuckers, I am. And I will always be that sand nigger. Because my sand nigger civilization is over 7,000, 8,000 years old. When your white ancestors were sitting on trees, right, we were creating roads and temples and ziggurats and that sort of thing, and charting the skies and the stars. As with the people of Africa, you know.
Right.
You got nothing. You got nothing to teach me, white man.
Hey, listen, man. I take the same sentiment. Man. Yeah. Just it's crazy that you say that. You know, while they were in you know, so-called in trees and in caves, crawling around on all fours, you know, what was my people doing? You know what I'm saying? And they have been very, very, very tricky at reversing the narrative, placing you in their position and placing themselves in yours. And this is a task of undoing that, you know, that all of us should take part in. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, when you're dealing with a people who have usurped your history and taken your identity, you know what I'm saying? You know, just like when I look, you know, into the Islamic world and I see these particular people and I'm like, wait a minute, man. You know, you are assuming my character, you know what I'm saying? And you know, it should be motivating. That's what it should be. It should be motivating for us to strive to take back the narrative, to correct the narrative, take back
100%. We take back the narrative, not just on this Islamic level either, even in this pre-Islamic
not just on
level.
the Islamic level either.
Yeah,
You're
we
right.
take everything back from these people because what they've done with history is basically whitened history and thrown a lens on history that is validating of them. You know, the whole myth of progress and that, you know, that history only moves in a linear line. That's the first place that this idol, this Taghut, needs to be knocked down. No, history doesn't work like that. You're not the culmination of human civilization. You just happen to find yourself especially during the last 500, 600 years in a position that now at the tail end of it, you've projected yourself as the acme of human civilization. But the actual human record and the collective memory demonstrate that this is untrue. And your own actions and behavior over this time have proven that this is not true. You're not the acme of human civilization. In fact, in some ways, you're the opposite of
it. More ways than one.
Yeah, more ways than one. We believe in equality. You say you believe in equality, and you practice inequality, right?
Absolutely. 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 I mean, absolutely can't trust nothing they say. Hey, everybody in the chat, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Drop where you from. Drop where you from. Drop where you checking in from. What city you from? What state you from? What country you from? Let me know right quick. Want to see what's going on here. Because the chat has been growing here lately. Praise be to Allah. I know we're getting ready. I know we've been on about an hour and 30 minutes. I guess our brother's still locked into that meeting. However, we'll schedule another one. We'll get in the inbox and schedule another one. And inshallah, he'll be able to get on. He had an emergency meeting, something that wasn't planned. But you know, at times, sometimes we just have to, you know, we gotta roll with the punches how they come, you know what I'm saying, and handle the responsibility as it's given to us. So inshallah, his meeting was good and everything is all right with the brother and their administration and everything going on over there. Um, Also, brother Sheikh, is there anything that you would like to leave with the listening audience? We've spoken about a lot tonight, but I do know you always have something you like to leave with the people. So we want to give you the opportunity to place that on the floor.
I tell people right now, keep your eyes and ears wide open. Don't accept any mainstream narrative about what this war represents, how it's going. Its details, nothing. If you can find me on X, Twitter, I follow a lot of pages that I just retweet as a matter of course.
Mm-hmm.
And those tweets you should follow. It takes you to the pages of the people I'm following, so you start to get a more comprehensive picture of what is actually unfolding in the Middle East right now, rather than what the networks are saying. ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all just assume the mainstream media to be just nothing but a propaganda bullhorn of the military right now. It's said military censorship, right? But this is a game changer. Number one. Number two, folks have to think very seriously about a regime change in Washington itself. This is real, because if this orange monkey is allowed to get even crazier than he is, then everything comes back at you. I mean, he's already unleashed ICE on the American public, and look at how many people they've killed so far, how many people they've disappeared so far. We don't know the real numbers of the atrocities that ICE has committed on American streets yet, right? And it's more than what the media is saying. I was hearing back mid last year that certain people that had been abducted in American streets were being actually dumped in the middle of the ocean, right? And reputable people who I consider to be credible and not, making stuff up, were saying this stuff in emails and that sort of thing. So we don't know yet the atrocities of this Trump Reich. So folks got to think about this. This is very serious stuff. This guy is dragging the whole world down with him. You have a genocidal Team America in place in the White House. But those who watch the South Park, and South Park has become a documentary. That's what people need to take away.
South Park is definitely a documentary. We got Phoenix, Arizona in the building. MKD podcast, Phoenix, Arizona. What's up? We got Chalk Girl Wonder, Temple 5, St. Louis, Missouri. Absolutely. And we have Brazil in the building. My brother, Muhammad Rahal, 5394 from Brazil. Honors and gratitude to Brazil in the building, St. Louis in the building, and Phoenix, Arizona in the building. Been a good one. It's been another good one, Brother Sheikh. We look forward for those who are on the Islamic path. I am working out a show that I know is going to be very good, and we're going to call this one. Yeah, we're gonna have the Sheikhs in the building. We're gonna have the brother Wahid Azal and Sheikh Sufi Ba in the building at the same time to give us a demonstration on Sufism from many different perspectives. Both of these brothers are highly educated and advanced and in the Sufi tarikats, and it's gonna be a beautiful. Oh my God, I'm bro. When I get y'all on, inshallah, when I get y'all on here, I'm gonna turn my camera and my mic off, and I'm gonna just let y'all talk. And I'm gonna have my pen and my pad out, and yes, sir, yes, sir. Because it's gonna be definitely a powerhouse for that one. I'm looking forward to that one, and I'm gonna see if we can get y'all two in the inbox or something, or at least with one of his disciples. Well, which I'm also a disciple of his too, but I'll get with one of the other brothers who have more direct communication with him, and we'll set that up. We'll get that, inshallah, we get that going. Because I
Inshallah.
really want ones to understand is that, you know, I know there are different expressions of Islam. There are different expressions. You have the Moorish Temple of America. You have Sufi Tariqats, many of them. You have Sunni Islam. You have Shia Islam. You have the Nation of Islam. You have the Ahmadiyas. You have so many different expressions of Islam. But I want one to understand. Though I'm a Moorish American Muslim, I'm not. I'm not. Put it like this. I'm not indifferent to either. I see the universal truth, you know, in all of it. I see the truth in all of it, and I just see it only as a different expression. And in my journey, I like to be exposed to different currents of thought. So, you know, you see me like when brothers see me at the mass here in my city. You know what I'm saying? They don't see me and be like, you know, oh, he's not a Moorish American because he's at the masjid today. It's not what they see. Like they understand that I'm a Moorish American, true and true. However, I like to be exposed to the universality and the universal currents of spirituality. And Islam is, you know, something that I admire, I adore, I adore, and I respect Islamic thinking. You know what I'm saying, on all facets. So when you see me, know that I'm your brother. I'm a believer. I'm of the submitters. I'm a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? Yes, I'm a Moorish American Muslim. Yes, the Prophet Noble True Ali is my prophet. He is absolutely without a doubt or contradiction. However, that doesn't mean that I don't embrace all of the Islamic diaspora. You know what I'm saying? Where Islam is actually being practiced. So, you know, I just wanted ones to understand it about me because I see that at times sometimes it's confusion as to who I am and what I represent. You know what I'm saying? I am a Moorish American Muslim. I'm a member of Sufi orders. I have been a part of other august bodies and occult bodies. I have been. And I still associate with those individuals because truth is but one. And, you know, and I stand on that. And hey, this has been another good one. Shay, it's been another good one. And I want to leave you with Noor Alaikum.
Alaikum Noor.
And I hope that we can get back on this platform soon. And
Inshallah.
I'm going to reach out to Brother Salman Sheikh because me and him got some talking to do and see if I can pick his brain about some things, you know. And I hope to see you. Inshallah, we'll speak again here soon, brother man.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Until the next time, brother man. Noor alaikum.
Alaikum Noor.
Alhamdulillah. Subhanallah. Peace.